Hey, welcome to the Treehouse Athenaeum, a place to discover the tools that empower you to embrace both the beauty and challenges of personal growth. There are so many branches leading to your roots. Come on, let's explore. Hi again. It's Divinity Dave, and I want to pick up where I left off with this part 2 of The Mountain Is You by Brianne Weist. And again, this book is just super powerful. It's about transforming self-sabotaging behaviors and trying to gain that self-mastery of our thoughts and like how we see ourselves and how we operate in the world. So I kind of just want to jump right in. I've been talking about triggers, and this section just really stuck out to me because as I started a lot of my inner work, my personal growth after my divorce, I started noticing a lot of behaviors. I purposely gave a lot of attention to who I was and how I was operating, especially after a big breakup. You want to examine everything in your life and see where you're at and why things happen the way they did. And so one of the biggest ways to learn who I was, one of the biggest teachers, was the triggers that were coming out, whether that was in new people I was dating or even within myself, like in the process of this growth, what things were still bothering me, were still making me not be my best version. The last part of this, I talked about anger and sadness. And in this one, I want to talk about guilt, shame, and jealousy, and how these triggers can really help identify where we're at, what we want, and how we're treating ourselves, in essence. Not just others, but ourselves. And that's where it all starts. It's usually a reflection. How we treat others is a reflection of how we actually treat ourselves, that inner world, that inner mental dialogue, in conversation that we are constantly, speaking to ourselves. So I want to start with guilt. And this is a complex topic for me growing up in the church, but also I think I'm very hard on myself. And usually we feel guilty when we do something wrong. And I try very hard to be a person that does right by people because I believe in karma. I am a firm believer in karma. What you put out comes back to you, that law of attraction. So not that I'm perfect, obviously, but I try. So when I have issues with guilt, when I'm triggered by guilt, it's usually with myself, not obtaining the goals I set for myself or not being able to reach these expectations that I've set for myself. Let's just analyze that. What is the trigger of guilt really telling us about ourselves? And one thing I've learned really quick, and she mentions too, guilt tends to affect us way more for what we didn't do rather than what we did do. Especially people who have, my perfectionists out there, you know what I mean. When we don't line up with the goals that we set for ourselves, we often come down really hard on ourselves. We beat ourselves up. We start this cycle of guilt, which leads to shame or embarrassment, and then shame later on. When you're not performing, do you hear it? Or you're not meeting up to the expectations that you think others have for you or you have for yourself. And that can look like a lot of things. It can be like not showing up right how you think you should in a relationship. It could be not meeting your deadlines. And there's so many ways to talk about this and to explore. This trigger of guilt has really shown me how to be gracious with myself, how to give myself love and to step into that self-love mode. When I am not obtaining these ideals for myself, when I think I should be performing more, when I should be creating more, when I should be showing up more for others, really I need to stop and look at myself and think about, what do I need? And why do I feel this way? Why do I expect these things out of myself? Is it realistic? Are these obtainable goals? As a perfectionist, and which is a defense mechanism, I think, from my youth, because if you distill perfectionism down, it's often an emotion that we carry from childhood. It's something that's projected onto us, whether that's our circumstances or it's family, in my experience, but that guilt that is put on us when we're not meeting or adding up to what they think we should be. So we have to examine, why do I feel guilty? Where is it coming from? Where's this voice? If I love myself and I know I'm doing the best I can, where is this voice of guilt, this unreasonable voice, usually, of guilt coming from? And why is it so loud? For me, in this process of healing a lot of these old wounds and sitting with my guilt, I started to analyze and be objective about these feelings. Where are they feeling? It's usually in my chest. It's in my gut. Like, it's a tension. It's uncomfortable. But this feeling of guilt is really coming from a place of not feeling enough, of not adding up to what I thought I should be, of the expectation of who I should be, what I should be doing, what I should have achieved by this point. And if you can hear it in that moment too, when I say it, what expectation? Where am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to be doing now? And it's these thoughts, whether that's societal pressure or the pressure of my parents or what I think other people think. It doesn't matter. I am exactly where I should be for exactly the right purposes right now. Like, I am exactly where I should be. And really, I'm enough as is. Even if I wasn't achieving or wasn't aiming for anything, I am enough and valuable and worthy just by existing, by being. That is enough. That I exist. I have source within me. I am part of the interconnected web of the universe. That in itself gives me value. That is more than enough. I am alive and I deserve respect and love and all the good in the universe simply by virtue of being. And once you step into that power of understanding that you are source, the breath of God, whatever you want to call it, what animates you is within you and it's within everyone else, that makes us worthy and entitled to the great things of the universe, to the abundance and the love and the respect. And once you get that and understand that you are worthy, that you are valuable, that really starts to make you question why, if I know this, then where are these feelings of guilt and not enoughness coming from? And it's always from somewhere outside of us. Because if you know that, if you have that truth within you, then these are projections that we've taken on from other people. So I want you to sit with that. Think about that. When you feel like you're not achieving enough, when you know, okay, and I want to say, there's times when we're lazy and we know we could do more, right? But then me being neurodivergent with ADHD, I had a conversation with my sister. This was really telling. I've been hyper-focused and super concerned about being lazy and not performing and not doing what I need to do to get my life where I need to get it. Does that make sense? Like, I have been stressing, causing myself anxiety through this whole like growth process, thinking like I should be doing more, I should be further along. Who, where, why? Where are these ideas coming from? Where are these standards that I'm holding myself to? These standards I don't even know. It's a feeling of, where's that coming from? And once I sit with it, I realize it's societal pressure. A man my age should be doing X, Y, and Z. To be successful, a man my age should be accomplishing this or have this or X, X, X. You know what I mean? So how does that translate for you? What does that mean for you? What stories and narratives are we holding ourselves to that just don't exist, that aren't real? I create my life. I know what I want authentically if I sit with it. Does it align with these ideas? And it doesn't. It doesn't align with the I need to produce more. I need to have more money. I need to that's not what I really want in life. I want to be fulfilled. I want to be creative. I want to have loving relationships in my life. And if my actions are lining me up in that vein, then I am doing more than enough. So again, this enoughness, where are these ideas of being enough coming from? And I love that Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now book, and he talks about being the observer of your thoughts. And that's how I started this process of understanding these triggers. Where are these thoughts and feelings of guilt coming from? For me, in my experience, it was my family of origin and it was church. And there's some societal pressure, but at the end of the day, I don't fucking care what society wants. I know I am an individual. I have a very unique path. Yeah, I feel like I should, not necessarily keep up with the Joneses, but there's things I want, but I don't need the new car. I don't need the big house, because then you got to take care of it and you got to pay for it. One of the things I think about all the time is I live on this gorgeous lake, and I rent in my building, but all around the lake there's these multi-million-dollar houses, beautiful, gorgeous, and every weekend I only see maybe max 2 boats or a jet ski and a boat out on the lake, and seldom at the same time. But every single house around this lake has a dock or, some a boat launch or something to hold their boats, right? Everyone's got a boat, but no one's out on the lake using them. And I think about that. I consider that if all of these people have these houses and all this money, and where are they? Why aren't they using it? Where's their freedom to use it? And the truth is, they're probably slaves to this debt or to this, the homes that they wanted. Or my point is, no one's out there enjoying what they have. And that for me is the big difference. Like, that's how I measure my success in my life. So that helped me find my center of what is important, what aligns with me authentically. For me, that's freedom. So again, full circle, when I come back to being an observer of my thoughts, where is this guilt coming from? It's not my own. This does not align with what I need, what I feel, who I know myself to be. Where are these thoughts coming from? What is making these triggers go off? And she says in here, guilt is often an emotion we carry from childhood. And again, that was for me, my family of origin, in the church. The church is such a mind fuck, and that can be any organized religion. That can be Catholicism, Mormonism, like any religious structure, Islam, even Hinduism. I know friends who have been in all of these, that there are intense prescribed ways of existing. You have to fit in a box, Heteronormative alone, being a queer person, that's a whole nother level. But these expectations of what that looks like. Growing up in the church, if you deviated from the norm, then there was this shame or a guilt that was associated with it, because you aren't following the prescribed expectation of what it is to be a good Christian, a good partner, a good man, a good woman, whatever that means, right? So when you get it in those religious institutions, on the threat of going to hell, when you add that, when you sprinkle that shit in, it's even more intense. But the truth is, it's trauma. It's so much trauma. But once you free yourself of that, the truth is, again, it doesn't align. Those are just guilt and shame used to control us, to keep us in line with society, to keep us controllable, to keep us in ignorance. And often we're afraid to leave that community because it's all we know. To be authentic, to stand in our alignment of who we really are, even though it goes against the grain of what we know, the community that we're raised in. That's the passage of the hero's journey, right? You have to go into the underworld. There's got to be a death. There's got to be a leaving, an exodus, to be reborn and reemerged as who you are. And it is uncomfortable. It's painful. But back to guilt. For me, I found the guilt was also my family. It was a way for my family to control me. Parents always, shame the kid for getting in the cookie jar, doing something bad. There's that instructional aspect to it. But even then, you got to be careful, because these mentalities, when you weaponize guilt, your children will internalize that. And we internalize things we don't even realize that we take into our lives, into our relationships in the future. And so now that I'm aware of, I see how my parents spoke to me as a kid, how my feelings were pushed aside for the sake of falling in line, and rather than being heard. My parents would often shame me, especially coming out. God, that was a whole experience. Coming out, my burgeoning sexuality, knowing that I was different, but yet in this system, church. Perfect example, my dad bought a Sports Illustrated calendar for me in an attempt to convert me, I guess. I don't know, to, sprinkle the seed of, that women are beautiful. Yeah, they are beautiful, but I'm looking at them for a very different reason. So, perfect story. I had this Michelle Pfeiffer poster from Batman Returns with the Catwoman and the blue eyes and just gorgeous. And I thought I was attracted to her. I was definitely attracted to her, but I think I wanted to be her equally as much. But anyway, I looked at women for a very different reason. But that calendar represented me not matching the expectation my father had for me. Let's just say that. So in a way to change me, to control me, to alter my course, I was shamed into questioning who I was and matching it up against a heteronormative standard that my dad expected of me. Obviously, it didn't work out well. His plan failed miserably, but you can't fight nature. I am who I am, right? So think about I just want to bring this up, these triggers. If you're triggered by guilt in your life in some way, ask why. Why are you feeling guilty about it? Is it because you've actually genuinely done something that you know you could have done better, or that you've hurt someone? And that's usually when we should feel guilt. Guilt is a healthy emotion when it tells us that we've wronged someone and we need to make amends. Remorse rather than guilt. Guilt is that constant lingering emotion, that negative emotion that doesn't go anywhere. That's when it becomes toxic. And guilt, that cycle, turns into another thing, which is embarrassment and shame, which is the shadow side of embarrassment. Embarrassment lets us know that we've done something wrong. We've stepped outside the bounds. We should have done better. We should have showed up more. We've let someone down, ourselves most often. But again, when embarrassment should be helping prompt you to do better, to show up better, to show up differently in the future, to not let that shortcoming, to learn from our mistakes, to be better than we were. The darker side, the shadow side of embarrassment often turns into shame. A lot of my experience growing up in the church, when shame becomes a part of your identity, when that embarrassment translates into you are not worthy, you are broken, you are not enough, is what the shame says. And again, church, if you're not meeting the standards like sex before marriage, I see how it treats women. God, the church and the patriarchy, we can go on for days, but to be a woman growing up, there's this expectation of purity and chastity, and yet we live in a society and a culture that constantly bombards us with expectations of what women should be sexually and how they should look and how they should appear and what kind of patriarchal ideal they should be, whether that's the good mother or the wife at home, the homemaker. There's just these prescribed things. And when we come from a place where we aren't taught to embrace our authentic nature, when we are taught that we need to subscribe to these toxic ideals, a lot of times shame will come into this place because these emotions, our authentic nature doesn't go away, but it knows when it's being suppressed. And we know, and that causes negative energies within us. It causes us to be depressed. It causes us to be angry because those feelings don't go anywhere. Like our voice doesn't stop. It just gets silenced. It gets muffled. And so these compound and they're suppressed, but it's going to come out. And God forbid it's a lifetime, that you go through this, because then it manifests like disease and chronic issues in the body. The body keeps the score. Always remember that. The body will keep the score. So if you aren't letting this stuff out, if you're not dealing with stuff in a healthy way, it's going to come out one way or another. And often that shows up as an ailments or negative physical effects within the body, So again, shame being the shadow side of embarrassment. Well, let's start with, what is shame? How does shame manifest? Shame tells us that we are worthless, that we are not worthy, we are not enough, that we are broken, and that there's something intrinsically wrong with us, which in Christianity, literally the idea of the original sin after Adam and Eve, like everyone henceforth came into the world a sinful creature. If you stop and sit with that, that is such a intensely awful way to experience life. If you literally think you came out of the womb sinful and broken, of course you need a savior. Of course you need someone outside yourself to save you. But the truth the real gag of this all is that we save ourselves, that Christ's energy is within us. The Savior is ourselves because we are God. It's all connected. But we are the only ones who can change ourselves. There's not something outside. Again, we can get into things. Obviously, there's help and there's spirit, but ultimately, the only change and transformation that we really can go through and obtain has to be initiated and done by us, elevating ourselves. Yes, we can learn. Yes, we get wisdom. Yes, there's inspiration. But ultimately, it's our action that prompts the movement forward, that initiates the change. We take the information, but it's us and our willpower to do it, to make it manifest, if you will. So again, this idea of original sin, to be taught from an early age that you're broken, that there's no hope unless you look outside yourself, unless you follow this prescribed religion, unless you follow prophet or philosophy. It's a philosophy of shame. It is a thought cycle of shame that keeps us ignorant and broken and suppressed. It keeps us bound. It keeps us chained in these thought cycles. So the guilt and shame go hand in hand often. You could have parents that shame you for not being enough. Again, for me being gay growing up, but I've seen, my sister shamed for being a woman, for expressing her sexuality. I've seen her shamed for not being thin enough, or for cutting her hair short. Like, it blows my mind when we're young and how people tell us, oh my God, she was on the apps for a period a while ago, and some guy random on like Bumble or whatever, Farmers Only. I don't know. She wasn't on that. That's hilarious though, because I want her to see this and that would be hilarious. But some guy, random, doesn't even know, says you would look better with longer hair. You would be prettier with longer hair. Again, shame. Who the fuck are you to say this to me? Like, where does this come from? It gagged me so much just to consider, one, because toxic masculinity, that men think they can speak into someone else, a random stranger's life with full validity. Like, he knows, like, ew, gross, ew, I hope he's single. God, that's so gross. But that shame, just people project this stuff onto us all the time. And if you come from that, if you grew up with that, sometimes you don't even realize it. It takes years to come out of it. It takes years to get that awareness, to gain that perspective of like, oh my God, I deserve better. This isn't normal. It doesn't resonate with who I am and what I want or what I know to be true. So anyway, examine shame in your life. If you're triggered, if you feel ashamed of something, if you feel like and it's not a healthy dose, if it's not like, I called out of work when I know I should have been there and I didn't do anything, or like, how often does that actually happen? If you're calling out of work, there's a reason you're calling out of work. It's seldom that you just don't want to go in and you don't give a shit. You know what I mean? Like, again, but yet we're shamed in this work culture. Like, if I need to take a health day, if I need a mental health day, if I need to go to the doctor, or I need something, I shouldn't feel shame for missing work because my life comes first. There's so many levels to this. Oh my God. Anyway, triggers, shame. Examine your shame. I didn't mean that to go so intensely deep, but what causes shame? Where does it come from? Chunk it down. Dig down to the source of it, and you will be amazed at the prompts that will come in your awareness and your growth. And just ask spirit. I always say, ask for clarity and it will come to you. But anyway, the next trigger I want to talk about is jealousy. Jealousy is fascinating. And I think it's definitely the lightest of the three. Hi, Taven. Jealousy is really interesting because when you are jealous of something or someone, if you see, social media culture, everything has highlighted this more than ever. When you see something that you desire and that you're jealous of, all it's doing is telling you what you desire. And it's really amazing if you sit with it and you start considering. So you see someone in that gym selfie and you're like, why are they doing that? Jealousy? What is that actually saying? That person, this is our projection onto that person. That person, regardless of what they're doing, yeah, maybe there's vanity in it. Maybe it just motivates them to go to the gym again tomorrow. Maybe it makes them feel good to post it and get the attention. Regardless, your projection onto that, or your friend buying a great new, a nice car, getting a house, or yada, 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 having the baby or getting engaged. What does that say about you? Because we give meaning to everything, right? We ascribe meaning to it. What is it saying about you when you judge or you are jealous of something? And the truth, the fact, if you get down to it, is it's something you want. There's something in that you want. It may not be the same exact thing, but there is something in that you desire. And jealousy, this is the nugget that I want you to take away. Jealousy reveals our desires. Hi, baby. What is that? What do you desire? So you see that gym selfie and you get annoyed, just irked a little by the 50th gym selfie they post this week. Is it you feel you should be going to the gym? You don't need the body, but you should be taking care of yourself more. You should be showing up for yourself more physically. What does that look like? Why does that bother you? Where does that come from? Be curious. Be objective about your thoughts. You see your friend get engaged. If you're not immediately happy for them, why? Why would you not be happy for your friend if they found love? I mean, where does that come from? What is it? Because you want that? Because you don't have that in your life? What does that look like? So I want to read some of these things that she put in this little section about jealousy. Jealousy is a cover-up emotion. It presents as anger or judgment, but when in reality, it is sadness and self-dissatisfaction. Jealousy guides us to what we really want. I love this. If you want to know what you truly want out of life, look at the people who you're jealous of. No, you may not want exactly what they have, but the feeling that you are experiencing is anger that they're allowing themselves to pursue it while you're not. Ooh, this whole book, truth bombs like this. Let me say it again. You may not exactly want what they have, but the feeling that you're experiencing is anger that they're allowing themselves to pursue it while you are not. This goes deep. Like, this is powerful and really substantial if you sit with it. What we want out of life is one thing, but allowing ourselves to pursue it, to actually go for it, to do the work to achieve it, that's the kicker. That's where we get upset and angry with ourselves. I don't got time. I don't have enough money. I have these responsibilities. If you want it bad enough, you can achieve it. You may have to move mountains, but you can do it. And this comes back to that savior piece I was talking about earlier. Nothing will happen unless you do it for yourself. And it may take a lot of work and a lot of planning and a lot of forethought about how to navigate. If this is the life I want, if I want to be in Ibiza, by next year, partying on a yacht, realistically, you can. What are the steps to get there? But what does that look like? And you have to be honest with yourself. You're going to have to work towards a lot of different things, whether that's networking with other people or finding a job that can support these dreams, these goals. There's just, you see what I'm saying? There's a path to it, but are you willing to do the work, to sacrifice what you need to get there, to show up for yourself, to get what you want? If you want a better job, what are you doing to get a better job? What are you doing to update your resume, to learn the skills you need for the job that you want? Are you doing the work to even figure out what makes you excited, what makes you passionate, what makes you come alive? Or do you just look at other people and you resent that, or you're jealous of that when you see them doing it on their, Insta stories and all? Be curious. Look deeper. Where are these things coming from and why? It's like the medicine. It's so hard, but it's so good, so good. When we use our jealousy to judge other people's accomplishments, we're sliding into the shadow function or shadow side of this. When we use our jealousy to show us what we would like to accomplish, we begin to recognize the self-sabotaging behavior that really keeps us from achieving these things and get ready to commit to what we actually desire. So jealousy, when embraced properly, is supposed to be the motivator that gets us from A to B, that gets us to our goals. Think of it this way. When you see someone who has something we really want, but we are suppressing our willingness to pursue it, we must also condemn it in them so we can justify our own course of action. Instead of this, we can see someone who has something that we really want, but we're suppressing our willingness to pursue it. The gym, period, eating healthy. Like, there's so many examples. We must also condemn it in others so we can justify our own course of action or inaction. I want to challenge you. We always do New Year's resolutions, but rather than that, in a healthy way, what are things that you really want? This week, I want you to take some time and just consider in your scrolling and your conversations at work and seeing the people around you, things on TV, whatever it may be, in your friendships and your relationships, what are some things that produces a desire, that jealous, even slight, like that desire in you to want something different for yourself? What does that look like? What are those things? And write them down. Journal. I don't know if you guys journal. I am a huge proponent of journaling. Journaling is life-changing, and I can't stress it enough, but you can't change my mind. There's something about the act of putting it down. Journal. Write these things down because it gives it a power. It gives it a concreteness. When you put it down, there's science that proves that we retain things differently when we write versus typing. But in a spiritual, energetic sense, there is a manifesting side to it. There is an energy, a concreteness, like I said, when you put things down. So look at these desires. What desires are you wanting for yourself? Even if they're obscure, even if it's off, you see something pretty. You see a pretty piece of someone making art. Do you want to be an artist? Do you want to have your own art gallery? Like, where does that come from? What do you want? It can be, anything, like just eating better, or, you want more plants in the house. Like, what do you see that you wish that you had for yourself in your marriage, in your relationships, with your children? What is that? Write it down, and let's just do a little game on what triggers us, and let's see who we really are. Let's see what it says about ourselves. I know this was not the most fun, but I think there's a lot of nuggets that I think will kind of spark some new paths for you. And I hope this resonates. And I'm going to come back and do a third part to this triggers, teaching us who we are. They're the guides to our freedom, as she calls it. What our triggers tell us about ourselves. So yay for self-discovery. And I hope this was insightful for you. But write down what are some of these triggers, what they're doing. I hope you have a great day.
Thanks for joining us in the treehouse today. We were so happy to have you. Hey, if you enjoyed your time here today, could you do us one little favor and pass this on to someone else who might enjoy it? We appreciate you so much. See you next week.